You know what? I got something to tell you.
No, you don't.
Okay? I got something to say to you.
What do
In
you got?
fact, I think everyone in this bar has something we have been waiting all night to say to you.
All right, I'm listening.
Happy birthday to you, everyone! Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday,
Oh, I love it. Thank you.
Brian. Happy birthday to you.
That happened at Podcrawl. Ian conspired with my business partners, Sarah and Tom, to throw that into my show. They brought out a giant cake, and it was awesome. It was really an awesome experience, and the Podcrawl itself went great. In the middle of everything, I was aggravated. I felt like it was a disaster because we were running 10 minutes behind schedule because we had some technology issues, and during my show, I didn't know if it was recording at all or broadcasting at all because we were having broadcasting issues. And it looked like the stream went down, and I didn't think that the show actually streamed out. And then I found out later that it did. Somehow, despite the computer saying that the stream was down, it was active, and it went out. It worked out really well. The event seemed more surreal and more impressive and more exciting than the one-year party. Even though the one-year party was a greater symbol of everything that we've accomplished and our success to this point. The Podcrawl showed the community that we've built, the community that we're a part of, and how we've become such a strong part of the community that we live in. It showed the family that we have created amongst podcasters, amongst business owners, and amongst the Millvale community at large. The Podcrawl showed what we can do as a station and what sets us apart from the other networks around the country. Creativity, innovation, and 60 plus hours without sleep. Those are some of the things that we offer. My dad posted on Facebook the day of my birthday, and let me point out, I wasn't trying to make the Podcrawl about my birthday. It was a complete surprise, and it was really an awesome surprise, but I was focused on the business and focused on what we needed to do to get out there in people's faces. The Podcrawl was an idea. I don't know if it's ever been done before. I was literally at the bar one evening, and I was having a drink, and it's funny because Alex does this segment on Mike's show, which you can hear tomorrow, 10 a.m., called Bar Thoughts with Alex. And I was literally sitting at Grist's house having a drink, and I had an epiphany, and I thought, you know what? Podcrawl. We need to have a bar crawl with podcasts. And we made it happen. So on my birthday, my dad writes on Facebook, "Happy birthday to my favorite son, the one person I know who works as hard as I used to. Keep following your dreams. You will get there. You will get where you want to be. I'm proud of you and I love you." And then he made some sort of snarky comment about my car needing inspected. But that meant a lot to me because he's my father, the hardest working person I knew growing up. And it meant a lot because I never know if he really gets what I'm doing here, if he gets this and he understands where this is going and what this can become. So that was awesome to see that. He worked to support the family. I don't have a family. I'm working hard and I'm working these crazy hours for a different reason. And sometimes you don't know if somebody understands that, if they're not in that same situation, if they aren't if they aren't motivated by the same goals. So that was awesome to see. The network itself is really a symbol of what hard work can do. It started off in a closet. Hard work and good luck. It started off in a closet, in an attic, and now we are the most exciting alternative media outlet in southwestern Pennsylvania, in my opinion, by far. Thanks to the work that we have put in here, thanks to the wonderful music that we stream, because of our unique approach to our business. Welcome to the River's Edge Radio Network. My name is Brian Crawford. You are here just 2 shows after Podcrawl. Well, 3 shows technically. And we are at riversedgepgh.com. We're streaming live on Facebook. riversedgepgh.com is brought to you by NGL WebTech, honest, practical, and affordable. Go to nglwebtech.com for all your web servicing needs. There's this podcast that I'm listening to, and I've really become obsessed with podcasts in the last couple weeks. I know that sounds weird, running an online media company, but I've always been more of a traditional radio guy. But now that I'm finding more podcasts that I like, podcasts outside of this network, and there's a few podcasts locally from other networks I listen to as well, but there's one I've been listening to lately. It's called Startup Podcast, and it's an interesting podcast, and it's put together by a gentleman named Alex Bloomberg, who started his own podcast company, and he made a podcast about starting a podcast company, to be specific. But he goes through the steps of where he went to start his company, and he talks to investors. And he had a background in NPR, so he had an easier time maybe getting investments early. But he's talking with investors, and he records the conversations, even the conversations where, like the first conversation he had where the investor told him that his pitch was awful, and he pitched Alex's idea better than Alex pitched it to him, and then he also pitched the other side of the argument as well. But they started that company off, and they got their investors with just an idea. And here at the River's Edge, we will be going to investors in the future with a 24-hour radio network with paid advertisements, all local original music, over 8 talk programs that you can hear, at least several of them live. And we're going to be approaching a business partners and investors with this kind of thing going with us. And what's exciting is what we have built here so far isn't even close to the ultimate goal. So stay tuned and listen, riversedgepgh.com, and you will be blown away. Just stay tuned. The future is going to be great. We've got lots of good stuff going on today. We have Jeremy of Nameless in August here in studio. He's going to be talking with us about everything he has going on. He's got a show coming up in just a few days at the Funhouse, which I'm excited about, and we will be broadcasting that live at riversedgepgh.com, so you can tune in to the audio stream and possibly the video stream. If we can get good enough internet, we are going to do a video broadcast as well. We have Matt Gajtka here in just 2 minutes. He's going to be giving us an update on the Steelers and the Pirates who are finishing up their season, as he always does every Monday here on River Talk. And we're also going to bring in Sean Logue, political attorney. He's been on the show before. He's actually working with the Donald Trump campaign as a political advisor. So we're going to ask him about this tax return situation, the legal questions regarding the way that the New York Times published it and received it, and how this can affect the Trump campaign. So we have lots of good stuff coming up. Oh, and we have a really interesting and kind of freaky, bizarre news story that's going to be coming up as well here on the River's Edge. But we're going to try and get Matt on the phone right now. Let's see if we can get him. And Matt, for those of you who are listening for the first time, he is the Pirates beat writer for DKPittsburghSports.com, and he also has a program here on the River's Edge as well. Let's get Matt on the phone. Hello. He's actually on the airport. He's calling in from the airport. Oh, there it is. My phone. You can click call, and it doesn't want to call. Here he comes. Usually I have him call me, but I forgot to text him. So we're just going to make it work. Hello, Matt.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. We have you on live right now. So you're
Oh,
out,
boy.
and you're on your way back to Pittsburgh. And so tell me, how did the Pirates do?
Well, they lost all 3 in St. Louis, so
Oh.
the season ended on a down note. They were in all 3 games, but the Cardinals absolutely needed them to have any playoff chance, and they got all of them. They just didn't get any help from the Giants, who won all 3 against Los Angeles. So both the Cardinals and the Pirates will finish the season out of the playoffs. That's the first time that's happened since 2010.
Wow. Well, you know, it was an unfortunate year. They had some things going against them, but What do you think was the main reason why they weren't able to make it this year? Do you think it was just the resurgence of the Cubs and their rise to the playoffs, or what do you think was the biggest thorn in the Pirates' side?
It's not the Cubs, even though you look at the record and the Pirates went 4-14-1 with that strange tie thrown in on Thursday against Chicago. But the Cubs are the best team in baseball. I fully expect them to give it a good run to finally break that World Series drought they've been building for more than a century there in Chicago. So they're the clear favorite for me going into the postseason. As for the Pirates, the pitching wasn't good enough. And when the Pirates have been really good lately, 2013, 2015, both times they won 94 or more games, it was because their run prevention was good. And you can tie defense in with that too. But there was too much hard contact given up, too many fly balls, too many home runs early on in the season. And some of that's mismanagement. Bringing in John Neese, who they thought would be at least competent, but he was not, and by the middle of the season he was gone back to the Mets. So that hurt. Started putting Ryan Vogelsong in the bullpen to start the year as opposed to Juan Nicasio. So all of that adds up, but also the players underperforming. Garrett Cole was hurt for part of the year, and when he was ostensibly healthy, he couldn't perform anywhere near where he needed to do, and Francisco Liriano ended up in Toronto, where he finished the season pretty well, but with Pittsburgh, he was one of the worst starting pitchers in baseball. So you could point to some of the offense, and then the defense hasn't been good in the final month, or it wasn't good in the final month of the season. But overall, if you were going to pin me down and ask me to pick one thing, it would be the pitching, in particular the starting pitching.
Yeah, we'll see. Do you think they have do you think they'll be able to turn it around for next year? What moves do they need to make? Do you think that it's likely that they'll be able to make it back in, or do you think it's going to be a difficult challenge with the competition in the division?
Well, you don't have to win the division to make it in, although it would be nice. The Pirates haven't done that since '92. They've never won the NL Central since it was formed in '95. That's the obvious goal, and that will be a particular challenge with the Cubs being as good as they are and as young as they are. So we're going to be real about that. We could say that the division is still a long shot for next year, but if you look at the competition this year in the wild card, it just would have taken 85 wins, which isn't that great. 86, I guess, it would have taken to make the postseason this year, or at least make it interesting going into the final weekend. And that's not out of their reach at all. It's still a solid core of position players, and we can expect some improvement from guys like Josh Bell, who just got a taste, to use his words, of the major leagues this season. It's just a matter of, do the young starters continue on their track of progress? Chad Kuhl, Jameson Taillon were both impressive in their own ways, especially Taillon in their first go-around in majors. I still think, though, they need to add someone from the outside, and if past behavior is a guide for the future, then it'll be someone who's undervalued. It'll be a veteran who has perhaps fallen on down times because the Pirates have shown either an unwillingness or an inability to go out there and outbid teams for players that are in high demand. And that'll be a challenge for them with the way that the ownership group likes to do things, and the way that the general manager likes to do things too. I think he has a comfort zone in finding or trying to find players who could do better in Pittsburgh than they have elsewhere. You go back to the A.J. Burnett pickup in 2012. That's a perfect example of that. So whether it be free agency or trade, I think we need to see some supplementation of the starting pitching in particular. That would be the one action spot, if you will, in this offseason that has to take top priority for me.
What about Andrew McCutchen? There's rumors out there now that the Pirates may be looking to deal him.
Yeah, there are rumors there. I think there's nothing really, I don't want to say valid, but there's nothing solid about them. Yes, every team in the Pirates position, which has to maximize its assets, should be asking around to see if teams are interested in any of their players, honestly, and they should listen to anything that other teams bring up, because it's always a possibility to get better. McCutchen had a discouraging year, even though he had a nice finish to the season, and his traditional numbers, his counting stats, homers and RBIs aren't going to look that bad in the end. But his rate numbers, and in particular his strikeouts, were very troubling for a guy who's still just 29 years old and will be 30 in 2017. He has 1 year left on his contract at $14 million next year, and then a team option for $14.75 in 2018. That's very reasonable if he comes anywhere close to his old level of production. He doesn't even have to be MVP caliber to make that a bargain for a team out there. So I think the contract is appealing, and I think the Pirates could parlay that into some additional pitching depth. They have a prospect in Austin Meadows coming up through the system that should be in Pittsburgh in the outfield at some point next season. And they're even going to move Josh Bell and John Jaso around the outfield too. So, defensively, McCutchen was one of the worst, if not the worst, center fielders in baseball, according to some advanced metrics that are out there. So even if he does come back, the Pirates are going to have to find a way to make him more valuable defensively. He cost them runs, not just at the plate for the first half of the season, but overall in the field. So the asset is depreciating in some cases, in some ways, and I would not blame the Pirates if they found a way to flip him into something that can help them compete not just next year or in 2018, but into the next decade.
Moving on to the Steelers, I'm going to get you in here in the next few minutes. We got a jam-packed schedule today. Talk about a difference, what a difference a week can make. I was on Football on High Heels before the Philadelphia game as a guest, saying that the Steelers were going to trample all over the Philadelphia and the Eagles, and I was completely wrong, obviously. But 1 week later, and here they are with that blowout victory that I was calling for.
Well, it happens in the NFL from time to time. You only get 16 games, and there are some weird results. And unlike in baseball or even hockey during the regular season, it's tough to shrug off 1 week. So a week like the Steelers had, a game like the Steelers had in Philadelphia, is going to feel huge, and it's going to feel extremely discouraging for the fan base, and I'm sure for the players and the coaches too. And Mike Tomlin called it Redemption Sunday. You got to love the dramatic language of football coaches sometimes, but it sure was for the Steelers last night at home. And I'm not going to BS you, Brian. I was watching the game, having a few beers with some of the Pirates beat reporters last night in St. Louis, so I didn't watch it with the most analytical eye, just more of a bit of a downtime after covering so many games this season on the baseball beat. But the Chiefs are a decent team, and for the Steelers to do that to them, even on home field, and in some tough weather for offense too, to do what they did last night is very impressive, and that shows the ceiling for this team. And last week showed us the floor of this team, but I think they're closer to the ceiling than they are to the floor most weeks. And just getting Le'Veon Bell back on the offense in the lineup, seeing his multi-talented array of skills that he can bring, that reminds you how dangerous this offense can be, and how much of a perfect modern back he is, because he can run and he can catch. And the way that the NFL and football in general is so pass-happy these days, pass-heavy, you need a back like that if you want to be a serious offense, and the Steelers do, and it's a good reminder of what exactly Bell can bring and how valuable he is, and how much the Steelers need him to be on the field and not going through these suspensions that aren't related at all to anything that's going on in football. It's just what he does away from the field that he needs to rein in a little bit, as long as he's in the NFL.
Matt, it's pretty pathetic, isn't it? I mean, just put down the smoking. Just put down the pipe for a few years. I mean, you have a short career anyways, and I'm not anti-smoking. If anyone's a listener to my program, they would know I'm an advocate for weed legalization. But even if it is legal, your employer can still make certain demands of you, and when you're making that kind of money, it just seems really, really pathetic.
Well, he claims that he did not smoke weed after he got pulled over. You remember that incident on McKnight Road with LeGarrette Blount 2 summers ago when he had the first suspension. He claims that it was just a missed test and there was a miscommunication. And looking at how the suspension went from 4 games to 3 games, I think that might have been the case. And I think the NFL bought his claim there. But at the same time, a missed test is a failed test in the eyes of the NFL. So it's not any extra credit to you that you just messed up and couldn't be accountable and get to that test on time. So I'm not excusing Bell, but I tend to believe him when he says that he hasn't smoked recently. It's just once you're on that program, Brian, once you're a first-time violator, then the scrutiny is going to be heavier. They're going to test you more often, and you have to be available for said test. And so that adds to the responsibility. That puts you at a higher level of scrutiny. It's probation, essentially, and he's going to be on it for the rest of his career, and he has to know that. And we'll excuse the term, but I think it's sobering for him once he screws up for a second time, and it's not even really technically about smoking marijuana. It's about just being there when you need to be there and owning up to past mistakes.
Yeah, I think the Steelers, fair point, and I think the Steelers, despite dealing with his suspension and everything else, the fact that they were able to win 2 out of the first 3, I think that they are in a good position really to do well this season. I thought initially with the suspensions and some of the injuries that this is going to be a rough year for them, but I think they've proven that they have the ability to kind of overcome those injuries, and I think that they could challenge New England possibly for the conference. I think that they actually are in a position now to make that happen, whereas, to be quite honest, before the season started, I was a little skeptical.
So was I. But the one thing that should lift your spirits if you are a Steelers fan is that when the Mike Tomlin Steelers are good, they're not streaky. They don't go up and down. They have good quarters of the season. And here they are 3-1 after the first quarter, if you will, of this year. They're not rambling off long winning streaks or long losing streaks of 3 or 4 games. Yes, they have the occasional letdown, or not to assume it was an emotional thing, but just a lack of execution last week in Philadelphia. They'll have that under Tomlin. Occasionally, you could say they lose to teams that they should beat. It happens in the NFL, but I think anecdotally you could say under Tomlin they've had more games than most in that category. However, they do perform well in the bigger games, on the bigger stages. Your Sunday nights, your Monday nights, they tend to respond to that. So give them credit for that characteristic. Whether it's something they've been able to control or not, I'm not sure, but it has been done, and it's an established habit for them. And they've kept a relatively even level of play when they've had good seasons, when they've won divisions, when they've gone to the Super Bowl. They've gone 3-1, 3-1, 3-1, 3-1, or something like that on their way to the playoffs. So this is falling into that pattern, and if you're a believer in history and the repeatability of it, I think that's a positive sign.
All right, Matt, thank you very much.
Yeah, you got it. Greetings again from another airport on the road. I'll finally be back in studio on Friday morning for Gajtka Game, getting ready to get back on a more consistent schedule. So thank you for having me on the show, as always.
As always enjoy it. That's Matt Gajtka with your not political update, that's Friday. With your sports update, you can catch him on Friday at 8 a.m. here at riversedgepgh.com. It's the only time I ever get to watch TV, to be quite honest, is for sports. I have to go out to the bar. I don't even have cable anymore. And I thought I would miss it, but I really don't. I don't miss it at all. I never watch anything. I'm either here or listening to a podcast or the radio. And one thing that has been kind of a blessing, and I saw a post my friend made saying something, it's all going to be over soon. And I thought, what are you talking about? Are you depressed about Obama leaving office, or are you happy he's leaving office? What are you talking about? And here he was talking about the political campaign ads all over TV, and I have been very blessed to miss out on those. However, I tend to be a judge of those things. One thing that I used to love doing as a delivery driver, and this is just kind of like the marketer in me, not that I have a marketing background, but I would go around and judge all of the political signs, the campaign signs, and now that I'm with my new job, I can't really do that as much, but there's really not a lot of that in Pittsburgh. Like out in the country or in the suburbs, you see like political signs everywhere, but in the city you don't see it as much. But we got a weird news story. We got some interesting weird news music. We're changing it up. This is usually the kids guy music, but I think you will understand why. Flood of social media posts. I'm reading from NBC 10. Flood of social media posts have surfaced in recent days threatening attacks on Philadelphia schools by clowns, some of which named specific schools prompted Philadelphia police and city school districts to investigate. And this is real. This is a serious... I mean, it sounds funny, it sounds ridiculous, and it sounds like something that would come out of a Batman comic, but it's actually real. According to USA Magazine, on Friday, September 30th, International Podcast Day and my birthday, schools in Reading, Ohio were closed after a clown made a threat to students while attacking a woman on her front porch. Kim Youngblood, 45, told police that she was outside her home at 2:30 a.m. when a man in a white mask, a red wig, and a striped costume grabbed her by the throat. And that's the New York Post reports that. "I'll just kill you. I should just kill you now," the clown reportedly told the victim before adding, "Some students and teachers would wish they were never born at the junior and senior high school today." The creepy character was then startled by a nearby noise and let her go before running off. There's other reports all around up and down the East Coast. North Carolina, there was a report on September 4th of two kids in Winston-Salem who claimed that a person in white overalls and white gloves and red shoes with red hair and a red nose tried to get them to come into the woods by offering candy. And apparently there was an adult with them who heard the voice. What the hell is going on? We've got Jeremy here, Jeremy Colbert, and I'm going to bring him on. Jeremy, this clown situation is crazy.
It is. But you know what? I think the timing is interesting, and I saw someone else post about this with the revival of the It movie that's coming out.
Oh, is there a movie coming out? See, I don't watch movies either. I'm the worst media guy ever. I have no idea what's going on in the celebrity world. I don't even know who any of the celebrities are.
Yeah, well, the famous, terrifying childhood movie It by Stephen King is coming back as a remake. And I haven't seen any of the media, but I've seen people's reactions to it, and it's probably going to be pretty creepy, and a lot of nightmares will be spawned from this. So I think it's just kind of in the culture right now.
Why do we have to remake everything? I mean, I think that's almost a bigger issue than the it's maybe not as bigger issue than the clowns attacking kids and women on their porches, but I mean, it is a big issue. Why do they have to remake everything?
I think it seems like there's like a 20-year cycle where these movies come back around, and then all of a sudden these franchises say, well, we can make a whole lot of money by taking these things that were very successful in the past and using our current technology and creativity and just creating this endless loop of entertainment and revenue. I think that's probably a large part of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I hate the recreation of movies. Like, to me, the old movies are good, and to me, the new ones tend to not really live up to the standard because it's not all about special effects. And I wonder, why are they paying writers at all if they're just gonna redo someone else's work?
It's a good point, and there's something definitely to attribute to the original. I'm neither for nor against. I think that there are definitely times where I look at a remake and I am entertained and I say, okay, you guys did a good job. You took this in a good direction. But a lot of times it's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Like, just leave it be. So I guess it's a gamble.
Yeah. What did we get off?
Yeah, they're remaking Beauty and the Beast. They're remaking The Lion King, apparently. So
I don't know.
Yeah,
Apparently we're having some audio issues. Hopefully they can be resolved because I am seeing it come through on my end. But yeah, I just no. It's like a destruction of your childhood. It's just there's no reason for it. The old movies were better. The new movies suck. Just no.
I guess you can look at it that way.
I mean, that's the way I look at it. I mean, there's very few movies. I think some movies, you're right, that they do come out with a good remake. If the old movie sucked, then I think a remake is good. If the old movie was good, then you're probably not going to be able to recapture that magic. And I think that's, like, my thought process. Like, what movie is it that always sucks? Like, every time they come out with Fantastic Four, for example, it's always terrible. Mm-hmm. So I can understand coming out with a new Fantastic Four because you can't do worse than the last Fantastic Four.
Try to make it better.
Yeah, at least then
like the rare situation where the movies get better as the sequels go, just because they started off so bad.
I don't know if I'd go that far, because the new believe it or not, there's like an old Fantastic Four where the technology was so bad when like Mr. Fantastic would stretch his arm, you would just see like an arm stretch across the screen, and that was pretty much it. You couldn't see anything because the graphics were so terrible, but the acting was better, the storyline was better, and Doctor Doom didn't seem quite so pathetic. So, I don't know.
Well, I'm not too familiar with the Fantastic Four, so I can't really add commentary to that specifically. But I kind of wonder, does that same thing ever happen in music? Do bands remake their albums? Has that ever been a thing? Like, we're just gonna re-record this album that was super successful. I don't think that's happened.
No, I don't really know of anyone who has done that. I know that people have come up with different versions of the same song, and sometimes there's, better or worse versions of that, but I don't think anyone's just come out and redone an album.
Yeah, I think people would be I think a lot of people would be in uproar if like there was this classic album, like if they just decided that they were gonna redo I'm trying to think of a band that has all the members still intact, and actually that would be even more frightening to see a band that has different members coming back in, and
Yeah.
like if the Grateful Dead tried to remake like American Beauty, like people would be like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. It's like people have talked about remaking Star Wars. No, never. We have Sean Logue on the phone. I hate to change subjects so abruptly, but he's on a busy schedule. Hello, how are you doing today, Mr. Logue?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm pulling up here on the screen for those of you who are able to take a look at the screen. The New York Times have released a tax return, an old one from the 90s, of Donald Trump, presidential candidate on the Republican ballot, where he showed a loss of $915,000. And
million.
million. Ugh, yeah, $950 million. And because of that, he hasn't had to pay taxes for a really long time. And the question that has come up is he as successful a businessman as he has said if he lost almost $1 million and it put him in that situation where he hasn't had to pay taxes? And I want to get your thoughts.
Great. I'm glad you asked for my thoughts. First of all, 3 pages of like 1,000-page tax return were released. 3. We don't know anything other than the fact that he's reporting a loss of $917 million. We don't know if that was his money that was lost. We don't know if those were loans from a bank. We don't know if it was a contractor who ripped him off. And I'm not a tax expert, but it's possible that a lot of that was real estate depreciation. So we don't know anything other than 3 pages were released, and on page 1 it shows a $917 million loss. Now look, Trump is not just a human being. Trump is a business. He's a brand. The only thing that pops out is that it's a big number, and I acknowledge it's a big number. But
It's huge.
This
Yeah.
is the way our tax system works. Hillary Clinton did use the exact same tax. I hate to say loophole, for lack of a better term, but tax preparation technique where she reported a loss in order to not pay future income taxes. But again, here's back to we don't know anything. We don't know anything. This is 3 pages of a 1,000-page return from 1995 or 1993, back in the 90s. We don't know what he's done since then. We don't know anything. We don't know any more of his income. All we know is that he is throwing around $917 million into the economy. So I don't know, what the big problem is. He's not evading taxes. He's not cheating on his taxes. He's showing a return and he's following the laws. I guarantee you the IRS audited that tax return, and no one charged him with a felony tax evasion scheme. So he was just following the laws of the country. I don't see what the big deal is. To me, this is a weak October surprise from the Clinton campaign to take our minds away from all the things that Clinton has done.
Don't you
the
think it
biggest
is
thing
fair,
we're not-
though, to expect him to release his tax returns for people to view? I mean, don't you think it's kind of crazy that the New York Times had to go through this? And that's another point that I do want to bring up with you is the legality of it and what may be the fallout from that. But don't you think it's kind of standard that a presidential candidate does release their tax returns, and the IRS has said that he's under no obligation to not release them despite being under the audit.
Oh, wait. A quote-unquote unnamed source within the IRS said that he's not being held up for releasing his tax returns. I'm not a tax lawyer, but I will tell you that audits are very, very complicated things, and perhaps he wants to give us the best explanation possible as to what his income is. He did file a complicated document for his financial disclosure that showed something like $700 million in income last year. I mean, he did file that. Now, I'm not going to defend him. I think the presidents should release their tax returns. But remember, like I said before, Trump is not just a man. Trump is like a brand, and this is a billion-dollar company. These tax returns are extremely complicated, and my guess is that he doesn't want to give a misleading answer as far as what his taxes were until this audit is complete. And here's the thing too: if this audit goes bad for Trump, and releasing this information could possibly cause it to go bad, he'd have to pay a lot more money in taxes. And at the end of the day, he's still a father and a husband, and he still has a family to protect, and thousands of employees to keep employed. So I understand his interest in waiting until the audit is complete before he actually releases it.
Now, on the subject of the New York Times, there's some questions as to the legality of releasing this tax return and where they got it. I know the Trump campaign has said that there is a possibility that there could be a lawsuit. Do you think that there will be a lawsuit, and on what grounds? Can you explain that whole legal process to us?
If the documents are legit, I don't think there's going to be a lawsuit. And my thinking goes back to the 70s when the Pentagon Papers were released. And the story behind that is there was a guy named Daniel Ellsberg who was an analyst with, I believe, the Rand Corporation. And he took classified information and gave it to the Washington Post, New York Times, and others, and they published it. And what it showed basically was that the Vietnam War was not winnable, and that the government knew that at the very beginning, and that all those men died, virtually for nothing. So they released it, and that issue was litigated up to the Supreme Court. And I think the final answer is that there's freedom of the press protections, and those things are very strong. New York versus Sullivan is the eminent Supreme Court case on that topic. So I don't think there's going to be a lawsuit on it. But I'm glad you brought up the New York Times per se. You have to remember, you have to go to the source of where this information came from and how they're presenting it. The New York Times hired some tax preparers to come on and speculate. Well, if Trump reported this big loss, maybe he hasn't paid taxes in 20 years. These people don't know anything. Again, this is a 1,000-page tax return, and we haven't seen anything from 1995 or 1996. We have no idea what he's doing or not doing. And for the New York Times to speculate, they could have also speculated the other way. The New York Times just speculated, he made $100 million on Celebrity Apprentice, so he probably paid $50 million in taxes on that. We don't know anything. And the New York Times, you have to look at what their biases are. The New York Times, there were years when they didn't pay any federal income taxes because they took the same advantage of the tax system that Trump took. The New York Times is owned by Carlos Slim, a billionaire, one of the richest men in the world from Mexico. And I want to point out that the Mexican peso is now at a 20-year low versus the United States dollar. So Carlos Slim's pocketbook is being hit directly from the fact that if Trump wins, his candidacy could severely hurt the peso, and the speculators are already betting that the peso is in trouble. Again, the peso's at a 20-year low. This directly hits the pocketbook of Carlos Slim, and Carlos Slim runs the New York Times. So let me tell you something. They have an absolute bias, a big multi-billion-dollar bias against Trump, and they're going to trump up whatever they can, against the Donald.
Yeah, the media, it's a shame that we live in a world where you do have to look at the money. Fox News has always come under criticism for some of their ownership and things like that. But I don't know. I think the simple thing to do would be to release the tax returns, and then I think that would clear everything up for him. But there is a funny meme out there, and I'll let you go on this note, Sean. There's a funny meme out there where Hillary Clinton is demanding Trump's tax returns, and Trump said he'll email them to her.
Yes, exactly. They're in the email. I mean, they're somewhere in the 33,000 emails that disappeared. All she has to do is find those deleted emails, and then we can all see what the big what the big surprise is.
Yeah. Thank you very much, as always. It's always a great insight from you. I always like to talk to you because we get a different perspective. It's not just an interest in politics. There's a legal background and a wealth of knowledge that comes around with your commentary. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's Sean Logue, political attorney. He's been on the show several times. And we actually have Jeremy, you want to play a song for us? And then we can roll along.
Sure. What do you think, Brian? I have two instruments here with me today in the studio. And do you have a preference of what I'd like to present first?
I don't know. Well, why don't we talk about I don't know the official name. I just know it as the turtle shell drum.
The space drum, yeah. The space turtle. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the terrapan. So there's this instrument that is inspired by a steel drum. It's basically, logistically, an inverted steel drum that you play with your hands, and it kind of looks like a little spaceship. And I actually have some video here, so if you're watching, I can show it to you. But kind of looks, and if you're not, I'll describe it as best I can. It kind of looks like a spaceship, like a flying saucer that you can hold in your hands. And around the top of this, there are different what we call nodes, which are little divots in the steel. So there's two pieces of steel shaped by hand with hammers into place, and each of these nodes gets a different note. So you have the middle tone, and then you have all of these other different notes. And through series of exploration and rhythm and melody, you can create some really cool auditory textures with this instrument. But originally, this configuration of the steel drum was formed in Switzerland in the year 2000, and the original name was called the Hang drum, H-A-N-G. It was made by one company called Panart, just a group of people that kind of really innovated this instrument. Then other people started to figure out how to make them, and they became known kind of as a more generic term as handpan. So you'll see handpan if you do a YouTube search, a lot of videos for that. However, the maker of this particular instrument calls them terrapans, and they come in all different types of tunings, all different types of notes. You can get them custom ordered. If you are interested in looking up more information, just Google terrapan. The company is called Terratones, Terratonz. But yeah, I'll play a little bit for you so you can get an idea of what
real quick, how did you find this instrument?
Oh, sure.
You personally, because I think that's an interesting instrument to just kind of stumble upon. I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah, well, for me, it was just kind of by chance. I had known about the Hang drum. I'd seen videos online, so I was familiar with the existence of this instrument. And it was just one night that I was out at an open mic at Hambones, and it was one of those, it's kind of a funny story, it's one of those nights where it was a holiday weekend, or a holiday week, and Hambones decided to combine on one of their days to compensate their comedy open mic and their music open mic. So they did an early show music, late show comedy. So I went out and I performed, and there was another performer there. He was from Australia, and he was traveling through, and he wasn't playing this instrument, but he borrowed someone's guitar and played and sang, and it was a really good performance. And I decided to talk with him afterward and just kind of say, "Hey, welcome to Pittsburgh. What are you doing here from Australia?" Turns out he was traveling and very nomadically traveling. He had said that he had just come basically all the way up from South America through all these countries, traveled up through Mexico and made his way up to Pittsburgh. And the reason he was in Pittsburgh that night was because he was traveling with this instrument and he needed to get it retuned. So there's a place near Morgantown there, which is a steel drum studio that they have specialists that tune steel drums and these instruments. So basically he dropped his instrument off and spent a night in Pittsburgh. And I happened to be at the same establishment where he was, and he was very kind to give me information and to point me in the right direction to get in touch with Terratones.
Are you the only person in Pittsburgh who lives here that plays this instrument?
As far
that you know of?
As far as I know, and as far as Chris at Terratones knows, I'm the only person who owns a Terrapan. Now, there are other instruments that are very similar that I've seen. I've only seen one other person who had one of these, and that was at an Art All Night a couple of years ago. And he allowed me to play. That was the first time I actually played one. But it wasn't a Terrapan. It was some other configuration. Someone else had made it. Okay. So there are a couple of them. I heard people say, oh, I saw that at the Arts Festival or something like that. So I know there's a couple of them roaming around, but I'm not sure who or what type of instrument, because they're all different tunings. They're all different. But
very cool. Well, I'm excited.
Yeah,
let's
play a little bit. Let me get in a good position here.
All right.
And if you can't see, it does have a hole in the bottom, so it is hollow.
Mm-hmm.
It forms a really cool harmonic overtone. But let's see what we can do here.
And you could also use that other mic. I can activate that if you need it.
That might be good. If I can just maneuver this.
He's moving the mic for those of you listening. This is a very cool instrument. You have to, if you're listening at riversedgepgh.com, you have to at least take a look at the video, or I'll try to post a picture after the show of what this instrument looks like. It's really fascinating.
I'm going to take these off for the time being.
All right. the river's edge will you hear that. That's awesome. That is why we are Pittsburgh's voice for local music. Fantastic. Seriously, you won't hear that anywhere else.
That's true. Nowhere else.
So that is awesome. Very cool. And is that going to be at the event at the 30th, the early show? You'll be Radio Birds will be performing with you there.
Yeah, absolutely. And in addition to that, I'm going to have a friend of mine join me. We've been experimenting with doing a duo. He plays in an open tuning on guitar, and we've been kind of experimenting with how those sounds kind of mesh together. So if you come out on Thursday evening at the Funhouse at Mr. Smalls, you'll definitely get a taste of that. We're gonna do a nice little duo terrapan and guitar, which should be fun.
I'm very excited. I'm very excited to be a part of that as well. We'll be there broadcasting it live so you can hear it again, which will be just so cool. It really is just a treat to be able to hear that. We're going to be right back with Jeremy, and we're going to talk more about the show at the Funhouse at Mr. Smalls in just a minute here on the River's Edge.
Would you be interested in developing conscious choice? Would you be interested in creating reactions rather than waiting for one to come? Would you be interested in combining serendipity and synchronicity? Would you be interested in making 1 + 1 = 3? Would you be interested in finding out about full impact mindfulness? If so, I challenge you to join myself, Jim Ellermeyer, a cognitive behavioral health therapist, every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. on the River's Edge, where we will challenge you to allow us to help you help yourself to fully participate in your life. Let the adventure begin.
All right, we are back. Had to get my plug in for Fishing Without Bait on Sundays. I'm running behind on my promos, but you had to hear that. That was awesome. So tell me about this show, and it's an important show to you.
Yes, it
For
is.
an interesting reason. We were just talking about birthdays, and I just turned old, and now you're turning old with me.
I'm right behind you there, Brian. I didn't realize we were born so close together. We're like exactly a week apart because you're the 30th, right?
I am the 30th, yes.
I am October 6th, so I was born a week after you.
That's because we're amazing people.
Yeah.
It's a good time to be born.
86, 30 years ago, man. 30 years. So yeah, I'm turning 30, and I am kind of a last minute sort of planner. I don't plan until it's right, before the ideal situation. So
Sure, I understand completely.
So I've been thinking about this all year. What am I gonna do? Everyone asks me, "What you gonna do for your 30th?" I don't know. We'll do something. We'll figure it out when it comes. And luckily, this kind of just fell into my lap beautifully because I have another friend of mine who her birthday is on October 5th. And she is a very dear friend of mine. She's also a big music fan. And for her birthday this year, she decided to put together a show with one of her favorite bands. So she had the space booked, and through kind of we ended up realizing that I ended up helping the situation for which she booked the show. There was this early show on Thursday, which they hadn't done. I was the first person to kind of do that. And I did that in August with a show I put together. So she was able to have this date. So the Radio Birds are from Atlanta, and they're a great band. They're really solid. They're really fun. I caught them live once down at Jam and Java a couple years ago. And she was like, "Well, we're putting this show together for my birthday show." I'm like, "When?" She's like, "October 6th. I'm like, "That's not your birthday. That's my birthday." She's like, "Well, it's close enough, And she was like, "Wow, we're looking for an opener." And it was just a sealed deal at that moment. So I'm excited about it. And I'm just doing a short opening set, but I'm really, really stoked about it. And I'm bringing in some friends to join me, some of which I've made music with in the past. And some new friends there's some new collaborations happening, one of which I already mentioned. So yeah, it's going to be a special day. And also the venue is fantastic. It's a newer venue in Pittsburgh, and if you're listening, if you think you've been to all the venues in Pittsburgh, no, come on out. It's a really great space to hear music.
Yeah, I love it there. It's one of my favorite venues, and I love the early shows because, as you know, my work schedule's a little crazy, and I'm able to go to them. So it's a wonderful thing. So I'm very excited about it, and I'm excited to see this again. I was able to see you play this at some open mics, and I'm excited to see how you're able to mix it in with some other people. You did play with the house band, I believe. With the can you give me the name of that instrument again? The
Terrapan.
'cause I just want to call it the turtle drum.
The space turtle. Yes.
Yes.
Well, actually, the thing about this instrument that I didn't mention is this particular one is tuned to slightly lower pitch than normal Western music frequency. In Western music, we tune with a standard of the note A being 440 hertz. So if you ever go out and listen to an orchestra and you hear them tuning up, they're all tuning to an A at 440 hertz. That's been the standard for many, many years, since about the mid 40s. However, there's some people who believe, there's a large group of people, and there's some evidence to sort of support this claim that a more intrinsic frequency with nature is just slightly below that at 432 hertz. So whether or not you believe that or not, you really can't deny that tuning to that frequency has a more warmer tone. It's just a little bit lower, and does, relatively speaking, have a bit of a warmer sound to it. So to answer your question, this instrument is hard to play along with other people if they're in normal tuning. So I have played with some people, but they've had to tune to the instrument, which can be a little bit of a pain, but for me it's totally worth it, because I didn't necessarily get this instrument to go and perform out a lot. I kind of got it to share and to be reflective and kind of,
I'm glad you fell through on that.
Yeah, so now I'm like, now it's like, hey, come watch me play Terrapan. But it's been a fun little journey so far. But I don't think I actually played with, I think I know what you're talking about, but I played a song on the Terrapan, and then I think I brought the house band
Okay,
up.
you brought them in, so I haven't heard it played with someone, so that's
this
gonna be exciting.
Thursday will be the first time.
All right, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And what else do you have going on? You're always in a million different ways, and if you're listening, just so you know, in 3 minutes we'll be kicked off of Facebook Live, and you'll have to go to riversedgepgh.com and listen to us old school style, audio only. So if we run over, that's going to be in about 2.5 minutes.
All right.
So prepare to go to riversedgepgh.com and click the live stream at the top of the page.
Sounds good. Actually, right now it's been a little bit less busy than normal. Normally I would be, going in a lot of different directions, and I still am keeping busy, but basically I had planned on recording this fall with Nameless in August, and a lot of things have kind of fell through with that a little bit. Our drummer, we're really happy for him. He just got married.
Oh, okay. Congrats to him.
But his wife got a job in Arizona, so it was kind of like, we are so happy for you. We're sorry to see you go. But so now my fall has opened up, which has been great for me because I realized that I haven't been getting back to my own music and my own expression. So I've just been writing a lot, and I assume that this fall I'll be playing a couple shows. I know I've got some in the works. I think you're a fan of Wolves in Sheep's Clothing, right?
Yes.
So I don't know if
Huge fan.
I don't know if I can announce this yet, but I'm sure they won't care. But they are doing
Breaking news.
They are doing an album release show at the winery.
Oh, nice.
And I will be playing a short set opening that night up for them, and that will be November, early November. I believe it's the 9th, but don't quote me on that. But please keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We love them. We found them the time that I saw them play with you guys, which was like that was like a dream show to get both of you guys together. But that show was only the second time I actually saw them live. They were one of the few bands that I had like very little contact with. I believe my business partner Sarah found them and added them to the network. And because they were so far, not that they're that far outside of the city, but they were far enough to where they didn't come in to play all the time. So I didn't get to see them afterwards. Most of the bands, even if they weren't a band that I approached, I eventually found my way to one of their shows to see them, because I like to see all the bands in person and, you know, try to show support to what they're doing. And I had a hard time seeing them, so that was only the second time I was actually able to see them perform. But it's great.
The good news is they are playing a lot more in Pittsburgh, and
They
some
are.
some of the members are now either living or seemingly planning to relocate out this way. So yeah, they're great. If Wolves in Sheep Clothing, check them out. They've got an album coming out, and I'm happy to be a part of that as well. So that's exciting for me. I have a couple other things in the works, but I not that I would feel comfortable announcing yet, because they're not confirmed. But there's some exciting things coming up, especially in November. So.
How has the quest to find a drummer gone for you guys? I imagine a band that is as solid as you guys, it would be hard to replace somebody whenever they do leave.
It is. It's always hard to replace any member. With drums, sometimes that can be difficult. Sometimes that can be easy with a group. With us, it's proving to be just a little bit difficult for a number of reasons. One, we're a string band, and typically string bands, when you bring in a drummer, it creates a lot of logistical issues. Now, in the past, with Mike, we actually had a very strong advantage where he played what we call a V-drum kit, which is an electronic drum kit. Which we've got a lot of mixed feelings about, and believe me, we've had our mixed feelings about it. However, we found that it was a tremendous benefit to us, because we had full control over on-stage volume and a number of other different things. So where we were playing, like for instance at Voodoo Brewery, we played a lot inside. If you have a full drum kit in that space, it's not going to be successful because of the acoustics and the way that things work.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, that became a very comfort. But for finding someone else, and a lot of people don't play that, and I don't know if we're looking for that again. So the search has been interesting. We've really only tried out one person as far as bringing them into a rehearsal space. But we're kind of taking this time as a bit of a slight hiatus to really there are a lot of things going on with members personally. One of our members just got engaged.
Oh wow.
Another one. So we're just kind of taking some time, and I think that in a couple months here we'll be going full force with moving forward with that.
Very cool. Well, I look forward to seeing you as an individual continue to grow, and I look to see some of the stuff that you're doing, because I imagine that's like difficult, because I know myself, I have Howie and Jay who come into studio every Saturday. They do a show with me, and I love it, and it's wonderful, and it's an easy show to do because we can bounce off of each other. A lot of times I'm here trying to strike up a conversation with myself, but at the same time, I love having that control and the creative autonomy to do what I want, and I don't think I could go into a show where I only have a co-host. Like, I don't think I could get into a show where I'm tied down to another person, because even with my producer, when I have a producer, I haven't had a producer for a while, but the producer kind of comes in when I invite him to. He doesn't just come in. So, I love having Jay and Howie in, but I like having them in once a week or once every other week instead of an everyday type of a thing. And it is really different performing with somebody or versus performing by yourself.
Yeah, and there are benefits and
Absolutely.
challenges to both. There's nothing like having that creative freedom. If you're a very creative individual, there's nothing like having, and I hate to use the word creative control because that's such a starch word, but it's nice to have that, because then you're not having to juggle a lot of other different things. You're not having to worry about people's egos and other people's creativity. But on the flip side of that coin, if you have the right people, and if you can kind of collaborate, the benefits are kind of exponential in a way if you get the right setting. And I think that's why bands form. I think that's why they stay together. And I think that's even why they stay together despite a lot of differences, because it's hard to be in a working relationship with multiple people.
Mm-hmm.
It just, you're going to run into problems. You're not going to have a perfect situation. So I think the music or whatever creative collaboration you're creating kind of tends to make up for all of those struggles, and it becomes worth it in the end, hopefully, or it's a fiery ball of exploding egos and creativity.
Well, you also got to find the right mix, because you need to have the right elements. It's one of the nice things when, you find someone you work with. And I, like Jay, for example, I've had him on the program since before the River's Edge was even a thing. So, we've always worked well together, but, there's other people, that come in, and it's, like, for example, I had one interview, and hopefully they're not listening, but the guest was great, but he brought someone with him, and I'm doing my opening monologue, and the guy just starts talking, like trying to, jump in. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? So, the guest, it was awful. I was like, and there was another time I had somebody in here, and it was just like chaos, because there was somebody else in here trying to comment on the conversation that we're having as if they're watching it from at home, and I'm like, you can't just talk in here. This is an active studio.
Yeah.
I don't mind you sitting in and listening, but it's you got to be quiet. So it depends. You got to have the right people who are in the same kind of mind frame and add something unique to the situation.
Yeah.
In order to keep it.
And that's
keep
how
it
you
going.
figure it out. You got to go through that trial and error, and then you realize, I'm sure you've had sessions where you're talking with someone, or you're just like, this is going really well. We are clicking. We are really, really working, vibing well. I can't wait to have this person back on my show, or I would love to collaborate with them. And I think that's musically, that happens a lot too, where you'll see two musicians just click, or, as a musician, you'll find someone that finally you feel like, oh my gosh, this person gets me musically. And I'm sure you've had that experience too.
Oh, sure. Creatively, I understand that. It's a little bit different because, well, not different. I shouldn't say different. It's a little bit, my personality, I think, makes it harder to do that. There's some people that just can't, I can't give anything up. So it's like, it's hard to, that's like I said, like with Jay, for example, it's like once every other week is good. Mm-hmm. But I come in with my own skits and things like that, and it's, it's hard to, I'm not very collaborative. So I think, now other ways I am, other times I can be, but as long as I have my own little thing, and I think that, so I'm excited to see what you come out with as an individual artist, because I think it'll be different than what you do with Nameless in August.
Very much.
And I'm excited to see those differences.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate enough to have, be in a creative realm where I can do the individual and the collaborative, and it kind of lends itself to all of that. You're in a position where you honestly, you need to have that control. You need to have everything lined up for you, because I'm just looking around your studio. There's all these wires, there's all these computers and screens and all this stuff that if someone else came in,
actually, you know what?
Mess it up.
You're right, and you made me think of something. I had a producer once, my first producer, and it was Jared, and I was doing at WCAL. And those of you who are watching, you won't be able to. You can't watch it because the stream is dead. But those of you who watch it on demand, WCAL, they had let's just say you're sitting here across from me. The table is here. The soundboard is here to my right. The computer is behind me. So if I was in the middle of an interview, I'd be whoosh, whoosh,
yeah,
whoosh, whoosh. And I would actually wear myself out spinning, trying to do everything at once. And I was desperate for a producer. And this one guy, his name's Jared. Jared Sofranka, he said one day, I was a guest on another show called Put It in the Morning, and it was a morning show at WCAL, and Jared was on the show, and in the middle of the discussion, he said, Brian, do you still need a producer? And I'm like, please, yes. So he joined the show, and he and I clicked, and I've had other really great producers. Tom's done a great job with me. My roommate Justin once produced, we did a thing together out of WPTS, and he produced my show. But with Jared, it was like he could read my mind,
Yeah.
and he would take it upon himself to do things on his own, but it was always within my style. He kind of got my style because I'm not zany at all. I don't like zany radio. I don't like, hey, it's radio. Whoa, 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 whoa. Like, I don't like that kind of stuff.
like that?
It makes my skin crawl. So, but he got that. But like, those of you who are long listeners of the show, you know that the bicyclists of Pittsburgh are my sworn enemy. So I would go off into a rant about the cyclists of Pittsburgh, and then all of a sudden we can't do this on this station, but he would creep in, Queen's bicycle song underneath me as I'm talking, or we did one little skit where we had Michael Bay call into the studio, and there were explosions going off, and the studio caught on fire and things like that. But he knew how to put things in exactly at the right spot, and it wasn't like I had to coach him through it the whole time, so then I could react to what he was doing. So
That's
I can
great.
understand exactly where you're coming from. Yeah,
and that's a situation where you find some, and it probably created the situation where, it's like I said, the sum is greater than the parts, and that mix of you two was creating a better listening experience.
Absolutely,
for your audience, and it's the same with music, and I've had that experience, and I've seen that experience where it's like, oh, these two. The best part is whenever like actually this new person that will be playing guitar with the Terrapan. His name is Dominic Antonelli. He's a very very talented young individual and very optimistic person, and we traveled together. We were able to visit Colorado in September, and people would listen to us, and afterward they'd be like, this is amazing, like you guys, like, how long have you been playing? And we're like, well, we just started yesterday or the same day. And it was just one of those moments where it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense. We kind of both know how to fill in those spaces or leave spaces for each other, which I think is important in music. So glad you had that experience, and it's always good to meet people.
What's funny about that too is after I told him one day, you did a great job and everything, and he's like, I didn't even know what I was doing. I'm like, well, you did something right. But
sometimes the greats will always say, like, they're people who are really good, and they're so
he's not
humble about it.
Yeah, and he's not going to school for radio either. He was going to school for business, a business degree. So he was just kind of doing it for fun, and he just wanted to jump on the show, and it was good. I got one fan letter when I was there, and out of WCAL, it's a music station. I think I was the only true talk show on the network. There were people who had talk segments. Put It in the Morning, for example, they did some talking on there, but I think I was the only one that was like primarily talk through most of the show. So people weren't used to it, but it's college radio. It's where you can use that venue to kind of hone your craft. So when you can get into the real world or start talking on the internet, you've got some experience behind you. So I got this letter from this prisoner actually, and there was a prison near us, and they always listened to the metal music. And at the time, metal was the major genre of music at the station. There were a lot of metal shows, and they would write in their requests to the metal DJs. And this guy wrote me like this huge long letter, and he had really small writing too, so he really went in depth, and he like went over like every single part of like multiple shows and everything else. And he was like, he was a big fan. And my biggest fear, because I knew that the prisoners listened, and my biggest fear was either they would be angry I was talking at all, or they didn't like what I was saying, and someone would come out and like kill me. And this guy, I think he was actually in jail for murder. But
nice. Was this written on like toilet paper? Did you?
No, it was like the old school yellow paper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and he was a huge fan of the show. I was like, oh,
awesome.
great, he's a big fan, because I thought for sure, he was going to come out and, put on that clown makeup that we were talking about earlier. And
attracting the psychos, man. Good job.
Yeah. But no, he likes me. So the crazies like me. So
me
so that's
too.
good. So,
the crazies like me too.
Yes, makes
great.
it fun and makes it exciting.
Oh yeah, very very unique experiences there.
It's 3 days from today, 7 p.m. It's going to be October the 6th at the Funhouse at Mr. Small's, the early show, 7 to 9:30. And you will be there, Jeremy Colbert, with Radio Birds. Check it out.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to come up with the holiday of the day, and that's going to be next. We're going to wrap it up with that here on the River's Edge. All right, today is actually National Techies Day. So, to celebrate, and I like to end the note on a celebratory note. Today was kind of like an uplifting show. Usually my shows are very pounded out and gruff and angry and holding people accountable and all of that kind of stuff. But today was kind of uplifting. So we're going to continue that trend. And I'm going to first off mention AwesomeCast. Of course, you should listen to them every Thursday morning at 7 a.m. here at the River's Edge. And it's a great technology podcast. They've been around for 6 years now. They were podcasting before it was cool, the true hipsters of the trade. So check them out. Really awesome stuff with Michael Sorg and the group. And Michael Sorg saved our video, by the way. We were doing video out at the pod crawl, and YouTube decided to change their services, and we were screwed. And Michael Sorg came in and saved the day. And a huge, huge shout out to Tom Benoit, our technology manager here at the River's Edge. He's the one who makes sure that all of the equipment is working, and anytime I come in here and there's a disaster, I can text him, and usually he can walk me through it, or else he just comes down and fixes it himself, which is always easier for me. But sometimes it's not always the most efficient mode if I'm here in studio needing something to go right away. That's it for me. I am going to be there at Thursday. I will be back here in studio Wednesday, so definitely tune in there. But tomorrow, Mike Sasson, he is back on air. He did double duty last week with the pod crawl, and he's back this Tuesday. Always good stuff with him. That's a good show. You got to check that out. It's our newest show, and it is just bringing in the numbers. So find out what you're missing and tune into riversedgepgh.com Thursday at 10 a.m. right here. I'll catch you Wednesday. Peace out.